When you step into a room, it's like a sudden gust of wind tearing down the soft curtains of everyone's comfortable fantasies. Every corner you touch is rattled awake. People feel the quake of your entrance long after you've gone, but they're left blinking in confusion, trapped between sensing that something profound just occurred and shrinking back from facing their own blind spots. It's as if they've caught a glimpse of a hidden painting. Then, overwhelmed by their own doubts, they turn away before they can take it all in. All those moments you spent puzzling over how people respond when you shine your light will vanish the instant clarity hits you. Like a lightning bolt that tears through years of old habits. You'll recall how a coach once compared certain folks to linemen on a football field, doing the same blocking and tackling as everyone else. Yet every move they make is replayed, scrutinized, and expected to be flawless. You weren't cut from the same cloth as everyone else. That's something nobody really spelled out for you, partly because they hadn't wrapped their heads around it either. And today, as God's promise unfolds in your life, could I ask you to step into this revelation by tapping the YouTube Super Thanks button with a gift of $20, $50, or more. Your generosity isn't just a donation. It's you sowing into the vision that's lighting the way for others. Folks you've never met can't help but gravitate toward you, drawn like moths to a flame, or else they'll recoil as if you've somehow offended them just by showing up. When you choose to give, whether $20, $50, or more, you're planting a seed that will empower this message to reach every heart that's hungry for hope. Whoever sows sparingly will also reap sparingly, and whoever sows generously will also reap generously. 2 Corinthians 9 verses 6-8. It's all because of that unmistakable glow you carry, the kind of magnetic vibe people can't quite pin down. As you invest in this ministry through Super Thanks, you're partnering in a harvest of blessings that will overflow back into your own life. Give, and it will be given to you. Luke 6 verse 38. So go ahead, choose $20, $50 or more, and watch God multiply this gift into everything you need and more. There's nothing flawed about the way you're built. It's exactly how you were meant to be. Think back to those earliest memories your caregivers couldn't quite puzzle out. How you'd stare into an empty room like you were watching a secret play unfold, or how you'd sense the mood of a place long before you had words for it. You probably noticed other kids gravitating toward you, drawn by something they couldn't explain. Your teacher's reports always called you an old soul, or uncannily perceptive, but you could tell they were scratching their heads, trying to make sense of something that just didn't fit their usual categories. As you let these words settle in, a sudden sharpness is cutting through all those years of confusion like scissors through tangled yarn. The people you trusted most, the ones who claimed to know your every flaw, who took notes on your hopes, have been playing a game you never even saw coming. When the truth finally lands, it'll hit you like cold medicine, healing, but hard to swallow. A sting of betrayal wrapped up in the relief of finally knowing. You've breezed through life, while those friendly-faced underminers and covert foes slipped into your story unnoticed. They charted your capacity to forgive like it was a roadmap to your soft spots. Every time you laid yourself open, they logged it in their personal dossier. Then they wove your trustworthiness into a noose to strangle your good name in front of everyone. What makes it so cruel is that they've turned the very core of who you are into the weapon they aim at you. Have you ever opened up about your deepest dreams only to have the same people later shrug and say your success was just a fluke or perfect timing? All the while, they'd quietly been stacking up proof to sell their story that you didn't really earn what came your way. And it wasn't just casual acquaintances. They were the folks in your inner circle, the ones you thought had your back. Remember how someone fell for your bright, unexpected colors only to spend weeks sanding them down until you looked like everyone else's wallpaper? They'd frame their nudges as loving suggestions, just trying to help you fit in, or for your own good. But all the while, they were whittling away the parts of you that made you, well, you. It's like they saw your wildflower spirit and then tried to prune you into a generic bouquet, safe and predictable. In the end, the message was always the same. You're just too vivid, too untamed, too much of yourself for their comfort. Let's hit the pause button on all this drama and focus on that nagging refrain that's been echoing in your mind since you first saw yourself in the mirror. It wasn't just critics or strangers. It was well-meaning friends, caring family members, even society's endless parade of shoulds. You got to make more friends. You need to get out there and mingle. They wove a story that painted your natural inclinations, your craving for solitude, your pick-and-choose approach to company, your sheer exhaustion at small talk, as if they were defects demanding an immediate fix. Your love of solitude wasn't a glitch in your wiring. It was your greatest asset, even if everyone else couldn't see it through their one-size-fits-all playbook for friendship. While they measured success by how many cocktail parties you'd attended or Facebook Lives you'd liked, you were quietly tuning yourself for a different kind of connection, a deeper frequency of human exchange that they never even knew existed. You probably didn't even catch the faintest hints. They were whisper quiet, but the universe was already nudging you away from a flock. That solitude wasn't a punishment. It was your personal boot camp. It wasn't about skipping cocktail parties, passing on backyard barbecues, or feeling like a wallflower at family gatherings. Those quiet evenings and weekends spent solo, they were your signal that you were gearing up for conversations that dive far deeper than casual chit-chat. You might still catch yourself clinging to that old notion that your preference for flying solo is somehow a social flaw in need of repair. But that nagging inner critic isn't really you. It's just the leftover chatter from everyone who ever insisted there's only one right way to connect, with their narrow, cookie-cutter playbook for relationships. Here's the twist the universe has been building toward, and where your first real aha moment solidifies. Those very folks doling out advice, who've been sizing you up against their own tiny blueprint for normal, have been sneakily holding you up as their own measuring stick. You've unwittingly become their guiding star, showing them what it looks like to live life on your own terms, free from the constant buzz of needing everyone's thumbs up, even as they've been trying to cram you into their little box of acceptable. You won't be able to ignore the pattern once you've noticed it. It's been so consistent that it almost seems supernatural. A project, a talent, or a career route would be mentioned in passing by a family member or friend, sometimes seriously, sometimes as pure imagination. After that, Spirit would gently nudge you in the same direction by whispering its instructions into your open mind. Years later, those same individuals would look on in confused disdain as you moved down that road in a natural way, accomplishing what others thought was impossible through what appeared like effortless harmony with your mission. While they continued to be mired in cycles of frustrated effort, they were unable to comprehend how you seemed to absorb knowledge and abilities like a sponge and managed to flourish in areas where they had been laboring for decades. If you're moved by divine love, now is the moment to share it. Click the Super Thanks button on YouTube and contribute $50 or more to help us broadcast God's blessings far and wide. Every act of generosity you make is being watched in heaven and will return to you 100-fold. This produced a humbling force that encircled everyone in your orbit and produced what I can only describe as a really strange energy. Something about your outlook on life kept glaring back at them with uncomfortably sharp clarity, despite their desire to ignore you and label you as lucky or undeserving. This phenomena has a straightforward, yet profound mechanism. The majority of people start learning a new skill or subject with a heavy burden of preconceptions, including worries about how they will be perceived by others, anxieties of failing, and a strong need to establish their value through accomplishment. Conversely, you approach these same topics with the inquisitiveness of a child and the knowledge of someone who recognizes that identity is independent of outward achievements. Your learning and development seem to accelerate supernaturally as a result of this fundamental shift in methodology. You flow with the universe's inherent intelligence, while others fight against their own reluctance. You let results arise naturally from your genuine engagement with the content, whereas they struggle to impose results. The findings speak for themselves, and they constantly cause discomfort in individuals who have been socialized to feel that anything valuable must be obtained by hardship and adversity. They started to see you as competition in a game you weren't even playing, instead of using this mirror for introspection and personal development, or letting your example motivate their own growth. At this point, the second significant pattern becomes apparent, the one that has shaped your relationships since you were a little child and is laying the foundation for all that is about to happen. Most people just cannot understand the vast intricacy of who you are. Your identity has never been linked to any of these outward successes, but others use them as building bricks for their identity, frantically attempting to become someone deserving of respect and affection. This basic difference in how you navigate the world leads to a paradox that perplexes and occasionally infuriates others around you. Spirit sees this disengagement in you and reacts by letting you open up like a flower in the sun, absorbing new information, wisdom, and experiences more quickly. Not because you're innately better than others, but rather because you don't have the burdensome ego that slows everyone else down. What takes others years of effort and study seems to come easily to you, because your sheer existence contradicts their basic beliefs about how life should operate. People frequently feel frightened or threatened by your presence. The intricacy of your character stretches into domains that are hard for others to define or comprehend. You can have viewpoints that defy accepted wisdom in ways that are difficult to ignore, hobbies that cut across seemingly unconnected domains, or emotional depths that unnerve others. Because of your complexity, people frequently feel as though they are only seeing a partial image of you and will never be able to fully piece it together. Others, particularly those who take pride in their ability to figure people out, or who depend on neatly classifying people into predictable categories, become frustrated by this imperfect comprehension. Your inability to fit into their mental file systems turns into a continual cause of annoyance for them, a riddle they are unable to answer that mirrors their own shortcomings in comprehending the complexity of people. In the meantime, you frequently felt that you're hiding important aspects of yourself from most people in social situations, not because you're being dishonest or manipulative, but just because most people aren't prepared to deal with the whole range of your feelings, thoughts, and views. You've learned to divide up your personality into manageable chunks based on what you believe other people can take, which has led to an odd situation where everyone believes they know you, yet somehow misses the core of who you truly are. You are their literal guide, not in a symbolic or metaphorical sense. Because of your modest approach to your own gifts, your innate ability to exist without continuously comparing yourself to others, and your instinctive understanding that true power comes from within, you are the living, breathing example that has been placed in their lives to demonstrate what is possible when someone operates from a place of authentic self-expression rather than desperate self-improvement. Their own possible metamorphosis is reflected in all of this, in the hope that being close to your frequency will someday remind people of their own divine nature. The universe has been using your existence as a living example of enlightened consciousness. Unfortunately, the majority of them completely overlook this lesson. The third pattern, which will ultimately result in their elimination from your experience, starts to take shape at this point. They place the blame on you when your paths finally diverge and your energy naturally draws you away from partnerships that no longer support your development. They conclude that you weren't typical enough, amiable enough, or compromising enough. They fail to see that you were never intended to be like them, and that your difference was intended to be a blessing rather than a criticism. At this point in the narrative, the stakes are personal, and the spiritual conflict is revealed. Intelligence has been gathered by others from your past who knew you well enough to recognize your patterns, but never fully appreciate the depth of your personality. They have been storing information about your character, your weaknesses, your hopes and anxieties, and your ways of working, not necessarily intentionally or maliciously. The confines of previous partnerships do not apply to this information. Brothers and sisters, everything done in faith multiplies in God's abundance. Use the Super Thanks feature to donate $100 today and join this sacred mission. When your roots are grounded in Him, your fruit will flourish, and your offering becomes a seed that bears blessed harvests. These individuals unintentionally act as conduits between you and forces that are completely opposed to your best interests because they are motivated by their own unresolved wounds and competitive drives. They serve as messengers, delivering information about your personality to those who would use them as weapons rather than as a source of learning. This is the way the universe has created a very complex exam for a person like you. This is the point at which the fourth pattern emerges, which explains why, despite your best efforts, your relationships have always seemed like battlefields. You become susceptible to a particular kind of manipulation that wouldn't work on someone more cynical or guarded because you operate from such a high frequency of respect for human dignity. Because you naturally see people layer upon layer upon layer. Because you offer forgiveness and second chances even when others haven't earned them. Those who grasp the language of hierarchy, who anticipate being beaten down, and who truly enjoy being told what to do or put in their place, are the ones who will challenge you the most. They see your failure to assert dominance or demand surrender as weakness rather than strength, even when you treat them with the same respect you would anybody else. They are unable to understand that real power does not require dominance games to establish itself. This leads to what I refer to as the relatability conundrum. At this point, all the patterns start to come together into one profound insight that will completely alter your life. Your openness, your dependability, and your capacity to see people for who they truly are, flaws and all, become the very traits that others turn against you. They assume that you must be naive because you are honest, foolish because you are forgiving, and easily misled because you are trusting. They project their own narrow definition of intelligence onto you. They have been functioning under the presumption that deceit is synonymous with knowledge, and that wisdom necessitates concealing aspects of oneself in order to preserve a competitive edge over others. They get even more irritated and determined to undermine your innate confidence when you refuse to play these games, and when you keep being authentic in spite of their attempts to penalize you for it. This interaction is especially twisted because they criticize you for having your true self while still depending on it. When they need frank criticism, sincere emotional support, or someone who will see past their superficial presence to their true selves, they turn to you. However, these same individuals will eventually take your openness and vulnerability as proof that you lack sophistication or practical knowledge. This relationship inherently involves subtle but continuous gaslighting. They take use of your gifts while persuading you that they are liabilities. They claim that the water is poisoned, but they nevertheless drink from the well of your authenticity. You develop a chronic sense of perplexity as a result of this, a persistent doubting of your own senses and intuitions that has likely persisted for years. However, as this drama unfolds in your bodily experience, something incredible has been occurring in the invisible realms, and this is where the story takes its most dramatic turn. Finally, your spiritual team, those guardians and guides who have been watching things unfold with growing concern, has had enough. Councils have decided that it's time for intervention because of a change in the cosmic order. There's a reason why you've been getting farther away from some folks. It's planned. You are systematically removing people from your sphere of influence who have been unwittingly acting as conduits to your opponents. Because your purpose here is too significant to be ruined by people who would prefer to bring you down than let themselves be raised. The universe is acting. This kind of intervention doesn't always take the form of explosive confrontations or spectacular exits. It can occasionally show up as a slow cooling of relationships, a drifting apart that seems natural but is actually directed by God. The frequency of phone calls decreases. The invitations stop coming in. Talks become more and more tense until contact eventually stops altogether. Sometimes the removal is more abrupt, such as when someone moves suddenly, their life changes suddenly, or they have revelations that prevent them from staying in touch. Something significant about the way energy functions in the spiritual world is revealed by the coincidence of these deviations. These weren't merely harsh people who happened to cross your path at random. They were a part of a planned pattern, a spiritual curriculum that was intended to test your devotion to your true self and hone your ability to discern who should have access to your energy. However, the intervention is more than just cutting out troublesome individuals from your life. Additionally, it's actively trying to settle spiritual contracts and karmic debts that have kept you bound to particular people or family patterns for longer than necessary. People are finally ending relationships that should have ended years ago. You are being released from obligations that were never really yours to bear. Your desire to put authenticity ahead of approval is breaking patterns that have been repeated through your family's generations. At first, what you're about to learn about some of these relationships will seem heartbreaking, but it's the kind of destruction that makes room for fresh development. The clarity that is beginning to emerge will demonstrate how they attempted to alter you and how, once their manipulation strategies failed, they sincerely thought you lacked intelligence. They anticipated that by playing mind games, subtly attacking your self-worth, and trying to assign you restrictive identities, they would eventually undermine your innate confidence and change you into a more controllable person. Their inability to alter your perception of yourself is the root of the deep disappointment they are currently feeling. You stayed essentially the same in your basic identity despite years of pressure, many attempts to shoehorn you into their boxes of understanding, and their constant attempts to persuade you that your way of being in the world was somehow incorrect or inadequate. Anger at the manipulation, sadness at the wasted potential of these relationships, relief that the constant pressure is finally being released, and maybe even a strange kind of gratitude for how these challenges strengthened your commitment to authenticity, are all likely to surface when you realize how much time and effort was spent trying to diminish you. Yearning to witness God's miracles firsthand? Plant your spiritual seed now by contributing $100 or more through the YouTube Super Thanks button. Your offering lights the path for others and echoes through His divine plan, bringing His light into every step you take. However, underlying all of these outward manifestations of feeling, there is something deeper, the realization that you have been fighting a spiritual battle without even realizing it. The struggles you believed to be interpersonal disputes or relationship problems were actually cosmic-level struggles between forces that sought to limit mankind and forces that sought to promote human development. Not only did you demonstrate personal strength by refusing to be broken, degraded, or transformed in accordance with the terrified projections of others, but you also triumphed for the collective awakening of human consciousness. Each time you opted for authenticity over approval, each time you remained true to your inner wisdom in the face of external pressure fit in, you were delivering a blow to freedom that had an impact well beyond your personal experience. The story's most profound truth, the secret that has been concealed in plain sight your entire life, is revealed at this point. Every human who has entered your life, every relationship that has tested you, and every person who has attempted to dull your light or reroute your course has all been a part of a complex spiritual curriculum created especially for your growth and theirs. Even though the universe placed you as their teacher and mentor, and they were supposed to be learning from you and using your example as motivation for their own development, the majority of them wasted their time attempting to become your teachers. Even though they totally flipped the relationship's natural order, you were functioning on a totally different frequency than everyone else, which is why you've always felt as though you were looking inwards, as if so much of yourself was still hidden in some invisible luggage that was never unpacked in social settings. Your soul has a unique purpose for being here, one that calls for a level of spiritual seclusion that most people would find intolerable. This does not imply that loneliness, in the traditional sense, is your fate. It indicates that you are being urged to cease gauging your development using criteria that were never intended for a person of your ability. These are the same people who have been covertly comparing themselves to your example all along, those who have been attempting to normalize you and socialize you in accordance with their narrow conception of human connection. The realization that you can accomplish your goals here without their understanding, friendship, or acceptance is the breakthrough that is currently taking place in your consciousness. Their approbation would actually mean that you have lowered your light level sufficiently to make them feel at ease, which would be a betrayal of all the goals you have set out to achieve. You may experience an initial outburst of grief or rage as this information becomes ingrained in you, and you start to realize the full extent of what has been going on behind the scenes in your life. This is normal. By attempting to impose connections with those who were only intended to serve as temporary teachers in your awakening curriculum, you have been bearing the burden of relationships that were never intended to last. However, there is something much more lovely and uplifting hidden beneath the initial jolt of awareness. All of the patterns we've identified start to come together into one amazing truth at this point. The cosmic clearing taking place in your life at the moment is creating room for relationships that function on your frequency. Relationships that respect your nature rather than attempting to alter it. Interactions that celebrate your gifts rather than feeling threatened by them. The universe is getting ready to present you to people who will know who you are the instant they feel your energy. You won't have to defend your decisions, explain yourself, or defend your way of being in order to establish these connections. The way you've always been able to see and know things that others completely miss. They'll just see you and know. This explains why you have followed such a lonely road, and why conventional wisdom regarding friendship and social interaction has never been appropriate to you. To appear regular, you weren't supposed to make a lot of friends or keep up superficial ties. Your relationships are supposed to be meaningful, life-changing, and comparatively uncommon. You no longer need to adjust or apologize for the light you carry. The frequency that attracts some individuals like moths to a flame while making others uncomfortable. This is your way of adding to the global awakening that is currently taking place. For those who are prepared to recall their own divine essence, your very presence, your defiance of constricting norms, and your inherent manifestation of genuine power all act as a light. Governments and institutions were not intended to be overthrown by the revolution you have been radiating all along. It was intended to dispel the myths that confine people to constrained versions of themselves. Your chaos is productive rather than destructive. It dispels illusions to create room for the truth to surface. The cognitive dissonance that arises when someone encounters a frequency they can sense but cannot yet embody, potential they recognize but are unsure how to access, is experienced by those who never forget you but nevertheless never truly see you either. The final truth that must be ingrained in your mind as we come to this realization, all the pieces of your story finally fitting together into a cohesive whole, is that you're actively catalyzing human evolution rather than merely participating in it, which is why you've never been able to locate your tribe through traditional channels, why everyday social dynamics have felt alien and draining, and why you've always felt that your role here is unique. Whether they realize it or not, the people around you are literally altering as a result of your frequency. Some people react to this shift with appreciation and development. Others react with hostility and resistance. However, your genuine presence has an impact on everyone who experiences it, forcing them to consider their own relationship with power, truth, and genuine self-expression. This is both the blessing and the hardship of being selected for this specific mission. You are ideally qualified for the work you came here to undertake because of the same traits that have made you feel alone and misunderstood, the loneliness you've carried, the miscommunications you've experienced, and the pressure to be someone else. All of this has been preparing you for this moment of realization, this awakening to your true purpose, and the realization that your difference is a quality to be embraced rather than a flaw to be fixed. The universe doesn't make mistakes when it comes to casting decisions. Therefore, keep in mind that your task has never been to conform to pre-existing systems or satisfy the expectations of others as you go forward from this epiphany and start operating from this new understanding of your true nature and purpose. It's your responsibility to be so true to yourself that you allow people to recall who they truly are despite all of their compromise and conditioning. You can now finally comprehend what people have been seeing when they look at you, which is the future version of themselves, the potential of what they could become if they had the courage to break free from the limitations they've accepted as permanent. This is because we've come full circle to that sideways glance you've been getting your entire life. That look of fascination mixed with fear. Greetings from your selected home. The wait is ended. The actual work starts.